boy lay motionless on the cold marble floor of the Morrison estate in Los Altos Hills. His eyes were shut tight, his small body trembling in shock. Beside him knelt Dave Kellerman, the family's plumber and electrician, his hands shaking as he held something tiny, pitch black, and moving. "Dave, what did you do to the boy?" Marcus Webb, head of the estate's security team, shouted, his eyes wide, body frozen stiff. The sharp sound of leather shoes echoed down the gleaming hallway. Alexandra Morrison, the youngest tech CEO in the world, according to Forbes, stormed into the room like a hurricane. Her face was pale, and in those cold blue eyes, for the first time, there was unmistakable fear. "What happened to my son?" she cried, voice trembling. "Leo!" Dave looked up, eyes glistening with tears. "I didn't hurt him, Ms. Morrison," he stammered hoarsely. "I swear, I was only trying to help." "Help?" Alexandra screamed, her voice thundering through the vast room. "You touched my son? You dared to lay a hand on him without my permission?" Slowly, Dave opened his rough, calloused palm. Resting inside was something strange. Black, wet, glistening under the chandelier's light. Everyone in the room instinctively stepped back, faces drained of color. The air thickened. Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. Then a faint sound broke through it. "Mom!" That voice. It came from the boy who had been deaf since birth, the boy who had never spoken a single word in 10 years. In that instant, no one dared move. Not even Alexandra Morrison. And that was when she realized the maintenance man had just done the impossible. Dear viewers, this is a moving story about faith, compassion, and a miracle that no amount of money can buy. A story that unfolds in the heart of Silicon Valley, a place that believes technology can solve everything, until it meets what machines can never heal. If you still believe miracles exist in this world, hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell, so each week we can explore stories that make your heart believe again. Stay with me until the end of this video, because what happens next will touch your heart and remind you. Sometimes, the greatest healing comes from the people we least expect. The Morrison estate was more than just a house. It was a declaration of power. Perched atop the hills of Los Altos, its living room windows offered a sweeping view of Silicon Valley, from Google's headquarters to Stanford's campus, from San Francisco's towers to the shimmering surface of the bay at sunset. The home was wrapped in floor-to-ceiling reinforced glass, run by an advanced AI system, with its own private gym, an infinity pool, and a wine cellar worth millions of dollars. And yet, no matter how luxurious it was, inside remained an emptiness, a void that no Persian carpet, no priceless painting could ever conceal. The servants moved like ghosts, so careful they made no sound. They often whispered among themselves, "The lady of this house loves perfection. No mistakes, no noise, and no emotion." Alexandra Morrison, 32 years old, CEO of Neurotech, a medical tech startup valued at $4.7 billion. She dropped out of Stanford in her second year to build an AI system capable of diagnosing faster and more accurately than any human doctor. Forbes called her the female Elon Musk of healthcare. TechCrunch described her as a genius without emotion. Her life was a string of flawless milestones: graduated high school at 16, entered Stanford on a full scholarship, founded her company at 19, became a billionaire before turning 30. Her schedule was timed down to the minute. Meeting after meeting. Contract after contract. Success, but solitude. Because behind those Armani suits and that icy composure was a mother who hadn't slept peacefully in years. Her only son, Leo Morrison, 10 years old, was born deaf. Not the ordinary kind of deafness. Doctors called it profound sensorineural hearing loss. The sound reached his ears, but his brain received nothing. No hearing aid could help. No cochlear implant had ever succeeded. Alexandra had flown across the world. Johns Hopkins, Mayo Clinic, Great Ormond Street in London, Charité in Berlin. She had spent millions of dollars hiring the best experts in the world. She even built a private lab within her own company, employing neuroscientists to study Leo's case. But each time she returned home, she was greeted by the same thing: absolute silence. Leo was now 10. He had never heard the sound of rain, never listened to ocean waves, and had never once heard his mother's voice. He had never spoken a single word. He lived in a world of his own, a world without sound. He would sit for hours by the window, watching Teslas glide down the road, drones humming across the sky, the world moving, while he remained trapped in silence. Sometimes, Leo pressed his ear against the glass, hoping the vibrations might turn into sound. But they never did. All the household staff were required to learn sign language to communicate with him, but most did so half-heartedly. Some pitied him, some feared him, and most simply ignored him. Because in a world that demanded speed, precision, and efficiency, a child who moved slowly and spoke with his hands was a system error no one wanted to face. But there was one man who saw the boy differently. His name was David Kellerman. Everyone in the house simply called him Dave. Dave Kellerman, 38, didn't belong to this world. He wasn't the Silicon Valley type, the kind who brainstormed over oat milk lattes and turned every idea into a million-dollar pitch. Dave came from the Central Valley, a farming region just a few hours' drive away. A place where people worked with their hands under a blistering sun on parched fields. There, the word startup meant firing up a tractor, not launching a tech company. He'd grown up in a farmer's family, working the fields since he was 12. But Dave didn't want to spend his whole life chained to cracked soil. He passed the paramedic training program and spent 6 years on the Fresno County Rescue Team. It was a brutal job. 24-hour shifts, horrific highway crashes, midnight overdoses, and emergency calls that came too late. But Dave loved it. He loved the feeling of saving someone in their darkest moment. Then he met Rachel. She was a nurse at St. Agnes Hospital. She had the brightest smile he'd ever seen, the kind that could light up an entire room. Patients used to say the best medicine was seeing Rachel smile in the morning. They married after a year of dating. A small, simple wedding at a Fresno church. Nothing glamorous, but full of love. A year later, they had Ethan Kellerman, the boy with his mother's brown eyes and her warm, gentle smile. Dave still remembered the moment he first held his son. So tiny, warm, and perfect that he swore he'd protect him at all costs. But life doesn't always let you keep your promises. October 2017. Rachel went to Las Vegas with some old friends to celebrate a birthday. A harmless weekend trip. Dave stayed home, taking care of Ethan, who was 4 at the time. On the night of October 1st, as Dave was feeding his son dinner, the phone rang. An unknown number. He answered. "Is this David Kellerman?" The woman's voice trembled. "Yes, speaking." "Are you the husband of Rachel Kellerman? What's going on? You need to come to Las Vegas immediately." The Route 91 Harvest shooting, the deadliest mass shooting in modern U.S. history. 58 dead, over 850 injured. And Rachel Kellerman was among those who never came home. Dave still remembered that overnight drive to Las Vegas, Ethan asleep in the back seat. He remembered the hospital's cold hallway, the white sheet over the familiar body, the small hand gripping his pants, and the trembling voice asking, "Daddy, where's Mommy?" After that, everything fell apart. Dave couldn't keep working as a paramedic. The sound of ambulance sirens made him panic. The smell of antiseptic made him sick. He quit, used the insurance payout and charity funds to arrange Rachel's funeral, then moved to California, hoping for a new beginning. But new beginnings aren't easy. Not when you're a single father with no advanced degree, no connections, and a past too painful to explain in any job interview. Dave took whatever work he could find: security guard, Uber driver, food delivery. Eventually, he landed a stable job: maintenance technician for a luxury property management company. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady, and it came with health insurance for Ethan, the most important thing. One of the sites under his care was the Morrison estate. Dave had worked there for 6 months before everything happened. He fixed air conditioners, replaced light bulbs, checked water filters, and maintained the smart home systems. It was quiet work. He came, did his job, and left. No one paid him any attention. Until he met Leo. The first time Dave saw Leo Morrison, the boy was sitting on the marble steps, lining up toy cars in perfect rows. Dave walked by, about to say hello, but Leo didn't look up, didn't react. He was too focused. Dave noticed something strange. The boy moved too carefully, too silently. Not like other 10-year-olds, who were loud, restless, bursting with life. He asked Marcus Webb, the head of security, "The boy, is something wrong?" Marcus gave him a cold look. "Not your business." "I was just asking." "The kid's deaf, can't talk, and it's not something you need to worry about. Get back to work." Dave nodded, but his chest tightened. A deaf child, in a house overflowing with wealth, technology, and power, still living in silence. He thought of Ethan, his 9-year-old son in Sunnyvale. Ethan could hear, could speak, could laugh. But he, too, had lost his mother. He, too, carried a pain words couldn't touch. Dave knew what loneliness looked like, and he saw it in Leo's eyes. From that day, Dave began to pay attention to the boy. Not intrusively, but gently, patiently, the way you'd approach a frightened bird. Each time he passed by where Leo played, Dave waved. At first, Leo didn't react, but Dave didn't give up. He waved every day. Until one morning, Leo waved back. Dave smiled. A small step, but a meaningful one. After that, he started learning basic sign language from YouTube. His fingers were clumsy, but he tried. Every time he saw Leo, he signed, "Hello." Leo's eyes widened in surprise, then he signed back, "Hello." And just like that, a quiet bond was formed. Not friendship in the usual sense, but a connection between two lonely souls who saw each other in a world that saw neither of them. Dave began leaving little gifts for Leo: a piece of chocolate, a paper airplane, a smooth stone shaped like a heart he found in the yard. Leo never said anything, but the gifts always disappeared. And sometimes Dave would find a scribbled drawing in return, a picture Leo had made for him. But not everyone in that mansion was happy about it. Marcus Webb was not an easy man. A former Secret Service agent, 45 years old, once assigned to protect high-ranking politicians, he now served as head of security for the Morrison family, with a 6-figure salary. Marcus lived by a simple philosophy: control everything, trust no one, and always stay alert. And in his eyes, Dave Kellerman was a potential threat, a stranger Not vetted as deeply as Marcus would have liked. Even though the maintenance company had run a background check, Marcus only trusted his own, who was becoming too friendly with the homeowner's son. For a security man, that was a flashing red warning sign. One afternoon, Marcus intercepted Dave in the hallway. "Kellerman, we need to talk." Dave was carrying his toolbox, heading to the basement to check the generator. He turned calmly. "Yes, sir?" Marcus stepped closer, his voice low and metallic. "I've noticed you've been interacting with Leo." "I just said hello to him." "Unnecessary." Dave frowned. "I didn't do anything wrong, just being kind to a kid." Marcus crossed his arms, tone ice cold. "Do you know how much you make, Kellerman? Do you know how much I make? And do you know what my job is? It's to make sure no one, and I mean no one, approaches that boy without authorization." Dave held his composure. "I understand, but I have no bad intentions." "Intentions don't matter," Marcus snapped. "Actions do, and yours are crossing a line." Dave looked straight into his eyes. One thing he'd learned as a paramedic: never back down from a bully. "With all due respect, Mr. Webb, I'm just being a decent human to a lonely child." "There's nothing wrong with that." Marcus's jaw tightened. "You want to keep this job?" Dave said nothing. "Then do your job. Fix things, maintain systems, and stay away from the boy. Clear?" Dave clenched his teeth. "Clear." Marcus turned and walked away, leaving Dave standing alone, furious, but powerless. But Dave didn't stop. He couldn't. Because every time he looked into Leo's eyes, he saw Ethan. He saw his own son. He saw the children he'd once saved as a paramedic. And he saw Rachel, the wife who'd taught him that kindness is never wasted. So Dave kept waving to Leo, kept signing hello, kept leaving those little gifts. Until one day, he realized something was wrong. It was a sunny March afternoon. California's breeze rustled through the oak trees in the mansion garden. Dave was fixing the automatic sprinkler system in the backyard when he noticed Leo sitting alone by the pool. The boy kept touching his ear, wincing, then lowering his hand, again and again. Dave watched carefully. The movement wasn't normal. Not an itch, not mild discomfort. It was pain. He set down his tools, rinsed his hands, and walked closer, stopping a few feet away so as not to startle the boy. "Hey," he signed. Leo looked up, offered a faint smile. "Hi. You okay?" Dave signed slowly. Leo hesitated, then shook his head. "Ear hurt?" Leo nodded. "How long?" Leo raised 5 fingers. 5 days. 5 days of ear pain. And no one knew. Dave's chest tightened. "You told your mom?" Leo shook his head quickly, fear flashing in his eyes. "Why not?" Leo signed a word that took Dave a few seconds to recognize. "Doctor." "You're scared of doctors?" Leo nodded, trembling. Then signed again, clumsy but clear. "They hurt me. Always. Tests, needles, machines. I hate it." Dave felt his heart squeeze. This boy, he'd been through countless tests, surgeries, experiments, poked, injected, trapped inside roaring MRI machines, hearing vibrations he couldn't even process. And now, Leo was so afraid he'd rather endure pain than speak up. Dave swallowed hard, forcing himself to stay calm. "Let me look at your ear, okay? I promise I won't hurt you." Leo's eyes filled with doubt. Dave placed a hand on his chest. "I swear, I used to be a paramedic. I know how to be gentle." Leo hesitated, then finally nodded. Dave crouched down to the boy's eye level. "Turn your head a little." Leo did. The afternoon sun fell directly on his ear. Dave squinted, inspecting carefully. At first, nothing. Then, something glimmered deep inside. Something black, unusual, moving. Dave's breath caught. He jerked back. Impossible. He looked again, and this time he was certain. Something alive was inside Leo's ear. His pulse raced. He'd seen strange things during his paramedic days: beans, insects, bits of cotton lodged in ear canals, but this was different, larger, deeper, and it seemed like it had been there for a long time. "Wait here," Dave signed, trying to sound calm so Leo wouldn't panic. Leo nodded. Dave pulled out his phone, opened a browser, typed "foreign object in ear canal plus hearing loss plus child." Dozens of medical articles appeared. He skimmed them quickly. Deeply lodged object may cause conductive hearing loss. Long-term cases can lead to infection or nerve damage. Some have been misdiagnosed as congenital deafness. Dave stopped, reread the last line slowly. His heart pounded. Could it be that Leo wasn't born deaf? Could it be that for 10 years something had blocked his hearing, and no one ever discovered it? But how? After so many doctors, so much technology. Then he remembered what an old nurse once told him back in his rescue days: "The eyes can't see what the mind doesn't expect." If doctors were convinced Leo's condition was neurological from birth, they'd never think to check his ear. They'd run brain scans, auditory nerve tests, cochlear implants. But no one would bend down and look at the simplest thing. Sometimes, complexity blinds people to the obvious. Dave looked back at Leo, waiting anxiously. He had to decide. Now, if he told Alexandra Morrison, what would she do? Call a doctor. And Leo would be thrown back into that cycle. Tests, needles, machines. But if Dave did nothing, the thing in his ear could cause infection, maybe permanent damage. He took a deep breath, shut his phone. This was no longer a rational decision. It was a human one. "Do you trust me?" he signed. Leo nodded. "I'm going to help you, but you have to be brave. Okay?" Leo swallowed hard, then nodded again. But at that very moment, the sharp echo of high heels struck the floor behind him. "What are you doing to my son?" Dave turned. Alexandra Morrison stood there, in a pristine white suit, hair neatly tied, her face like ice. Behind her was Marcus Webb, his hand already on his radio. The air froze. And just like that, the real storm began. "What are you doing to my son?" Alexandra's voice didn't need to rise, yet every word cut sharp as a blade. Dave stood up, hands raised. "Ms. Morrison, I'm sorry if I worried you. I was just checking." "Checking?" Alexandra stepped closer, glanced at Leo, then back at Dave. "Do you have a medical degree? A license to practice?" "No, but I used to be a paramedic." "Used to be," Alexandra emphasized each word. "Meaning you are not now. Meaning you have no right to touch my son." Marcus stepped forward, his tone low and threatening. "I warned you, Kellerman." Dave looked at Marcus, then back to Alexandra. "Please, listen to me. There's something in his ear. I saw it. It could be the reason he can't hear." Alexandra stood still, expressionless. "Who do you think you are? You believe that in 10 minutes of looking into my son's ear, you know more than world-class specialists who've examined him for 10 years? I'm not saying I know more." "Then don't speak." Alexandra turned to Marcus. "Escort him off the property. Now." "Don't!" The cry burst from Leo. All eyes swung toward the boy. Leo stood, trembling, but his gaze was resolute. He signed rapidly. "Dave is telling the truth. My ear hurts. It's been a long time." Alexandra froze. What did you say?" She signed back with shaking hands. "My ear hurts. For many days. I was afraid to tell you." "Why?" Alexandra signed, her motions beginning to falter. "I'm afraid of doctors. afraid of pain again. It struck Alexandra like lightning. She dropped to her knees, gripping her son's shoulders. You've been in pain? All by yourself? Leo nodded, tears spilling over. Alexandra pulled him into a tight embrace. For the first time in years, the wall around her emotions collapsed. My baby, you should have told me. I would never let you hurt. Dave stood still, feeling he had stepped into a private moment. But Leo gently slipped from his mother's arms and signed, Dave can help me. Alexandra looked up, her face wet and bewildered. You really saw something? Dave nodded. Yes. I don't know what it is, but it's deep in the ear canal, and it seems alive. Alexandra rose and wiped her tears. Marcus, call Dr. Reeves, now. Marcus pulled out his phone. No, Leo signed emphatically. No doctors! Alexandra turned back. Sweetheart, we need... No. Leo backed away, eyes red. I don't want to go to the hospital again. Dave stepped in. Ms. Morrison, if you allow me, I can try. If it's just a foreign body, I've handled many similar cases. Gently, quickly, without pain. Alexandra looked at Dave, then at her son. She stood between reason and instinct, between medical protocol and trust in a stranger. Marcus spoke up. Ms. Morrison, this is not a wise decision. If anything goes wrong... Marcus, be quiet. Alexandra kept her eyes on Dave. If you hurt my son, I will ruin your life. Do you understand? Dave nodded. I do. And if you're not certain, not even a little, you stop immediately. I promise. Alexandra turned, knelt, and took Leo's hand. Are you sure? I can call a doctor here. They can give you pain relief. Leo shook his head and signed. I trust Dave. Alexandra closed her eyes, drew a deep breath, then looked straight at Dave. Do it. Dave nodded and turned to Marcus. I need a small flashlight, medical tweezers if you have them, or fine forceps, and antiseptic. Marcus hesitated. Do it, Alexandra ordered. Marcus clenched his jaw and went for the supplies. Dave knelt beside Leo. You might feel a little uncomfortable, but I'll be as fast as I can, okay? Leo nodded. Marcus returned with a first aid kit. Dave cleaned his hands with antiseptic and switched on the flashlight. The beam revealed the thing more clearly. A black object, about 5 to 7 millimeters, oval-shaped, lodged deep against the ear canal. Its surface was smooth, membrane-like. When the light hit it, it retracted slightly. This was a living organism. Dave swallowed. He'd seen earbugs before, but this was larger. A kind of larva? A leech? Or something he'd never encountered? What is it? Alexandra asked, her voice unsteady. It's alive, Dave said. I'm not sure exactly what, but it's been there a long time. A very long time. He looked up. This could explain everything. Alexandra's eyes widened. You're saying my son wasn't born deaf? I can't claim that, but if this has completely blocked the canal and put pressure on the eardrum for years... Dave paused. It's possible. The air seemed to freeze. Alexandra covered her mouth, eyes brimming, speechless. Dave turned back to Leo. I'm going to start. Breathe deep. Leo inhaled, exhaled. Dave grasped the tweezers, carefully moistened with antiseptic, and guided them millimeter by millimeter into the canal. His hands trembled ever so slightly, not from fear, but from responsibility. One small mistake could perforate the eardrum and cause permanent deafness. Oh, God, Dave whispered a prayer. Guide my hands. The tweezer tips touched the object, soft yet tough. He pinched as lightly as possible, careful not to crush it. Leo winced, but made no sound. Dave kept a steady hold and drew back slowly. The object clung stubbornly. He felt the resistance. "Breathe steadily, Leo," Dave murmured, knowing the boy couldn't hear him. He pulled a bit more. The object started to slide, just a little farther, and it came free. Dave withdrew the tweezers. At their tip writhed a slick black creature about 1 centimeter long, its tiny legs twitching. "Christ," Marcus breathed. Alexandra stared, face drained. What is that?" Dave examined it closely. "Looks like an ear-boring fly larva. Dermestidae or something similar. They can live in the ear canal, feeding on dead tissue and secretions. Rare, but not unheard of." "How long has it been in my son?" Alexandra whispered. Dave met her eyes. "Judging by the size, possibly years, since Leo was very young." Alexandra staggered back, shaking all over. "No, impossible. We've taken him to hundreds of appointments. The specialists focused on neurology, the brain, the cochlea. No one did the simplest external ear check thoroughly enough." Dave placed the organism into a zip bag Marcus held open. "It's so rare, no one thought of it." Leo sat still, eyes wide on Dave. He didn't yet understand what had just happened. Dave signed to him. "It's done. I took it out." Leo blinked. He touched his ear. The pain was gone. And then his face changed. His eyes widened. His mouth parted. "Leo," Alexandra signed urgently, stepping forward. "Are you okay?" Leo wasn't looking at his mother's hands. He was looking around the room as if he were seeing something. Or, rather, hearing it. Dave understood immediately. "The boy is hearing." "Impossible," Alexandra gasped. And then it happened. Leo turned to his mother, his lips trembling. A tiny sound emerged. Alexandra froze. His voice was hoarse, unsteady, like someone who had never used his vocal cords. Tears spilled down Alexandra's cheeks. "Leo, are you—" "Mom." This time, clearer. Leo met her eyes. "Mom, I hear you." Alexandra collapsed to her knees, clutching him, sobbing. "You can speak. You can hear. My God, you can hear." Marcus stood rooted, colorless. Dave stepped back, shaking. He had just witnessed a miracle. Not born of technology, not of millions of dollars, but of a simple act by a man who only wanted to help a child. Then Leo cried out, hands clamped to his ears. "Too loud! Too loud!" His voice was equal parts fear and wonder. Alexandra immediately signed, "It's okay, sweetheart. Those are sounds. You're hearing them for the first time." Leo looked around, eyes rimmed red. The ticking clock, the soft hum of the air conditioner, birds outside the window, the breathing of everyone in the room. All of it rushed in at once. Too much. Too overwhelming. Dave knelt, speaking very slowly. "Leo, look at me. Breathe. Slowly." The boy fixed on Dave's eyes. Dave tapped his shoulder gently, in rhythm. "Slowly. You're okay. These are sounds. You'll get used to them." Dave's voice was low and warm. Leo began to calm. Then he whispered, "Your voice. I know. Your voice." Dave smiled, tears falling. "Yes, it's me. Thank you." Leo threw his arms around him. Dave hugged the boy and closed his eyes. He thought of Rachel, of Ethan, of the people he had once saved, and of this time, the time he saved a child in a way he'd never imagined. Alexandra Morrison was not the kind of woman who let emotions dictate her decisions, but right now, standing in the living room watching her son, the child she once believed would live forever in silence, listening to birds sing and laughing softly, she felt her entire world collapse and rebuild in the same heartbeat. "Marcus," she said, her voice cold but firm, Call Dr. Chen. Tell him to come here. Not tomorrow. Not tonight. Now. Marcus immediately dialed. Dave stood, wiping his hands on his pants. I think I should go. Leo needs time with his family. Stay. Alexandra turned to him, her eyes unwavering. You just did what the world's top doctors couldn't. I want you here when they explain why. Dave nodded, though a quiet unease rose in his gut. 45 minutes later, Dr. Richard Chen, Chief Medical Officer of Neurotech Medical Institute, entered the mansion, puzzled and anxious. At 58, his hair was completely white. Once head of neurology at Stanford, he'd been personally recruited by Alexandra, with what she called an impossible-to-refuse offer. Ms. Morrison, I came as soon as... He froze when he saw Leo sitting on the sofa, wearing noise-canceling headphones, and talking to his mother. He's speaking? Dr. Chen blinked, stunned. Not just speaking. He's hearing. Completely. Alexandra handed him a Ziploc bag. Inside, the black larva writhed faintly. This is what Mr. Kellerman removed from my son's ear. Dr. Chen lifted the bag, his face blanching. This is a living organism? Ear-boring fly larva, Dave said. I believe it's been there since Leo was very young, blocking the ear canal and pressing on the eardrum. Only now did Dr. Chen turn to him. And you are? Maintenance technician, former paramedic. A maintenance man did what an entire medical team couldn't? Dr. Chen's voice trembled. With anger or fear, it was hard to tell. Alexandra stepped forward, her tone razor-sharp. I want to know. Why didn't anyone discover this? Dr. Chen opened his mouth, but nothing came out. I'm asking you, Dr. Chen. Alexandra took another step. 10 years, hundreds of tests, dozens of doctors, millions of dollars, MRI, CT, auditory brain scans, implants, and not one person, not one, looked into my son's ear with a flashlight and a pair of tweezers. Dr. Chen backed half a step. Ms. Morrison, we followed standard protocols. Whose protocols? The ones written by people who don't know how to do basic checks? Her voice was glacial. Or the ones designed to prolong treatment so I'd keep paying? Are you accusing me? I'm asking. Her teeth clenched. Why didn't anyone examine the outer ear canal? Dr. Chen set the bag down and wiped sweat from his brow. With a diagnosis of sensorineural hearing loss, our focus was on the auditory nerve, cochlea, and brain. Conductive hearing loss, from blockage, is usually obvious, with distinct symptoms. But my son had symptoms. He said his ear hurt. He was uncomfortable. And no one asked? Alexandra turned to Marcus. Pull his medical records, all of them. I want to know how many times Leo complained about ear pain. Marcus opened his iPad and accessed the database. Dave glanced at Dr. Chen. In the man's eyes, he saw a familiar look. Guilt. Not the guilt of malice, but of blind faith in a system that had forgotten what healing meant. Marcus looked up, pale. Ms. Morrison, 14 times. In the past 3 years, Leo's file notes ear discomfort 14 separate times. Alexandra froze. And? Each entry is marked as behavioral manifestation of frustration. No ear examination was ordered. The air thickened. Alexandra turned sharply to Dr. Chen, eyes blazing. You thought my son's pain was just a behavioral manifestation? Instead of checking, you wrote it off as frustration? Ms. Morrison, given the established diagnosis, I don't care about context, Alexandra shouted, her voice cracking. My son was in pain. He needed help, and you all ignored him. Dr. Chen bowed his head. I'm sorry. Sorry isn't enough. Alexandra strode to her desk, opened her laptop. Marcus, arrange a press conference. Tomorrow. Ms. Morrison? Dr. Chen stammered. I'll make everything public. The records, the costs, every time my son's symptoms were dismissed. She looked him dead in the eye. And I'll sue Neurotech Medical Institute, my own company. Dr. Chen went white. You can't. I'm the CEO. I can. Alexandra's fingers flew across the keyboard. And I will. Because if this could happen to my child, when I have money, power, and access, it's happening to countless others. Dave spoke quietly, but firmly. Ms. Morrison, forgive me for saying this, but I don't think this is just about your hospital. She turned. What do you mean? Dave took a slow breath. You took Leo everywhere. Johns Hopkins, Mayo Clinic, London, Berlin. They all missed it. This isn't one institution's failure. It's a failure of the system itself. Alexandra looked at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. You're right, Dr. Chen whispered, voice trembling. So, what will we do? Going public will destroy the industry's credibility. Good, Alexandra cut him off. If that credibility is built on ignoring suffering children, then it deserves to be destroyed. 18 hours later, press room, Palo Alto. The conference room was packed. Reporters from TechCrunch, Wired, the New York Times, and CNN filled every seat. Cameras flashed. The air buzzed with tension like a gathering storm. Alexandra Morrison stepped to the podium. Black suit, no jewelry, hair pulled back tight. Today, she wasn't the face of a billion-dollar empire. She was a mother who'd waited too long. Leo sat beside her, noise-canceling headphones still on, eyes bright with pride. Dave stood in the background. He hadn't wanted to appear, but Alexandra insisted. Thank you all for coming, Alexandra began, her voice calm but heavy. I didn't prepare a speech. I just want to tell the truth. The room fell silent. For 10 years, I believed my son, Leo, was born deaf. I spent millions, traveled across the world, sought out the best doctors, the most advanced technology. She paused, swallowed hard. But we were all wrong. Leo wasn't born deaf. He was deaf because a living larva was inside his ear, something no doctor ever found. Until a maintenance worker, not a physician, not a specialist, shone a flashlight and used a pair of tweezers. Murmurs rippled through the room. I'm not here to blame a single person, she continued. I'm here to say this. Our medical system has failed. We've become so dependent on technology, so enslaved to protocol, that we've forgotten the basics. Alexandra looked straight into the cameras. My son complained of ear pain 14 times. 14. And every time, the record said, behavioral manifestation of frustration. No one checked. Because once a diagnosis is stamped, the system doesn't allow anyone to question it. She gripped the microphone. I founded Neurotech because I believed AI could revolutionize medicine. I still believe that, but technology will never replace this. She placed a hand on her chest. Compassion, humanity, the ability to look a child in the eyes and know something's wrong. Alexandra turned and gestured for Dave to come forward. He hesitated, then stepped up. This is David Kellerman, she said, maintenance technician, former paramedic, single father, and the man who saved my son's life. Dave bowed slightly, uneasy under the flood of lights. Alexandra continued, Mr. Kellerman didn't do this for money or recognition. He did it because he cared, because he saw a child in pain and acted. She faced the press again. Today, I'm announcing the creation of the Leo Morrison Foundation, dedicated to providing free medical care for children with hearing impairments. not just through advanced technology, but through complete care, including the simplest checks our current system too often overlooks. Reporters' hands shot up, flashes blinding. Alexandra raised her hand for silence. And one more thing. Mr. David Kellerman will serve as the Foundation's executive director, with full authority and compensation worthy of the role. Because if we're going to fix the system, we need people like him. People who put humanity before protocol. Dave's eyes widened. Ms. Morrison, I can't. You can. And you will. Alexandra smiled, her first of the day. If you'll accept. Dave turned to Leo. The boy, beaming behind his headphones, gave him a thumbs up. Dave's throat tightened. He thought of Rachel, of the children he'd once saved, of Ethan waiting for him at home. Then he nodded. I accept. The room erupted in applause like thunder. 2 weeks after the press conference, the medical world shook. The Lancet, one of the most respected medical journals in the world, published an urgent editorial. The Morrison Case, a wake-up call for diagnostic protocols. The Journal of the American Medical Association, JMAA, launched a formal investigation into diagnostic anchoring bias, the tendency to cling to an initial diagnosis and ignore new evidence. Both Johns Hopkins and Mayo Clinic announced full reviews of every pediatric hearing loss case from the past 10 years. The FDA issued new guidance. All pediatric hearing loss diagnoses must include a physical examination of the outer ear canal using an otoscope before any advanced testing. But not all responses were positive. Some physicians fumed, accusing Alexandra of undermining trust in medicine. Some lawyers threatened lawsuits for defamation. Some investors dumped Neurotech stock, sending the company's valuation down 30% in a week. Alexandra didn't flinch. She personally poured $500 million of her own fortune into the Leo Morrison Foundation. She fired the entire executive board of Neurotech Medical Institute and built a new team, one that included nurses, paramedics, and field clinicians, not just degrees and titles. As the Foundation's executive director, Dave Kellerman spent his first 3 weeks studying everything he could about childhood hearing loss. He assembled a 20-person team, half medical professionals, half parents of deaf or hard-of-hearing children. We don't need more doctors, Dave said at the first meeting. We need more human beings. He founded Morrison Mobile Clinics, fully equipped medical trucks that traveled across California, offering free ear screenings for children. No insurance, no paperwork, just show up. In the first month, they examined 847 children. They found 12 cases like Leo's. Foreign objects in the ear canal, mistaken for congenital deafness. 12 children heard for the first time. 12 families wept. 12 miracles. But not all stories ended happily. One evening, Dave sat alone in his new office at the Foundation's Mountain View headquarters. Streetlights sparkled outside like low-hanging stars. His phone rang, an unknown number. David Kellerman. Mr. Kellerman, this is Michelle Cole. My daughter Lily was examined by your team last week. Dave remembered immediately. Lily, 6 years old, completely deaf since birth. They'd run every test, no foreign object. Diagnosis: congenital sensorineural deafness. Yes, I remember Lily. How is she? Michelle's voice quivered. You gave us hope, and now we know there's no miracle for our child. Do you have any idea what that feels like? Dave closed his eyes. I'm so sorry. I know. No, you don't. She began to cry. For 6 years, I accepted it. I learned sign language, built a life around it. Then you came along and made me believe maybe Lily could be like the Morrison boy. But she's not. Dave swallowed hard. Mrs. Cole, I'm truly sorry. We never wanted to create false hope. I know, she said softly. I know your heart is good. But please remember this. Not every deaf child needs to be fixed. Some of us have learned how to be happy as we are. She hung up. Dave sat in the dark for a long time. He understood something then. He couldn't save everyone, and sometimes saving wasn't what people needed. He called Alexandra. We need a new division in the foundation, he said. What kind of division? A deaf community support unit. Not to cure, to celebrate, to help families accept and thrive. Alexandra was silent for a few seconds. Then she spoke quietly. You're right. Do it. Leo Morrison now had to learn how to live in a world full of sound. And that, as it turned out, wasn't as easy as everyone thought. During the first week, he could barely sleep. Everything was too loud, too new, too overwhelming. The ticking clock, the hum of the air conditioner, the whistle of wind through the windows, birds singing, airplanes overhead. All the sounds others took for granted were, to Leo, a storm that never stopped. Alexandra hired both an auditory therapist and a speech pathologist. Every day, Leo practiced distinguishing sounds, forming words, and controlling his voice. Sometimes too loud, sometimes so soft it was barely a whisper. But the hardest part wasn't learning to speak. It was going to school. Leo was transferred from his school for the deaf to a regular public school. There, he became the strange kid. Mom, why do I sound different from the others? He asked one night after his first day. Alexandra sat beside him, pulling him close. You're still learning to use your voice, sweetheart. That takes time. But they laughed at me. Tears rolled down his cheeks. They mocked me, Mom. Alexandra's heart shattered. Do you want me to move you to another school? Leo shook his head, his voice barely a breeze. I want to stay. I want to be normal. Alexandra hugged him tight. You already are. Just a little different? And different is never wrong. But that night, after Leo fell asleep, Alexandra sat in her study, staring at a framed photo of the two of them. She picked up her phone and called Dave. Leo's having a hard time at school. I don't know what to do. There was silence for a few seconds on the other end. Do you want me to come talk to him? Dave asked. You'd do that? Leo's my friend. Of course. The next afternoon, Dave came to the Morrison estate after work, bringing Ethan, his son. It was the first time the two boys met. Leo, this is Ethan, my son, Dave said. Leo looked at Ethan. Ethan, 9 years old, tan-skinned, warm brown eyes, and an easy grin. Hi, Dad said you just learned to talk? Cool. Leo hesitated. Yeah, but I sound weird. Ethan shook his head instantly. Nah, you just sound like someone with an accent. Like my grandma. She speaks English with one. Not weird, just different. Leo blinked. Really? Really? Dad told me your story. You couldn't hear for 10 years, and now you're learning to talk. That's not weird. That's amazing. Leo laughed. For the first time in days. The boys started playing video games. Ethan taught Leo the Whisper Challenge, the one where you mouth words and try to guess them. Leo giggled, his voice shaky at first, then stronger, clearer. For the first time, he felt comfortable with the sound of his own voice. Outside, through the glass, Dave and Alexandra stood watching in silence. Both of them smiled. Thank you, Dave, Alexandra said softly. It's nothing, he replied. Sometimes kids don't need specialists. They just need a friend. Alexandra turned to him, her voice barely above a whisper. You know, I used to think that if I controlled everything, I could protect my son. But you've shown me that sometimes what he needs most is someone who truly cares. Dave nodded. Leo's a special kid. He's going to be fine. Thanks to you? She hesitated, then asked quietly, Dave, why did you do it? Why risk your job, your life, everything, for a child you barely knew? Dave looked out the window, at the two boys laughing together. Because once I couldn't save the person I loved. I couldn't save my wife. But maybe, just maybe, I could save someone else. And that makes the pain hurt a little less. Alexandra fell silent. Tears welled in her eyes, not from sadness, but from something deeper. Rachel would be proud of you. Dave smiled, a tear tracing down his cheek. I hope so. And in that room, surrounded by laughter, stuttering words, and the fragile beauty of new sound, the lives of those two men, a father and a son, were forever changed. 1 year passed, and the world, or at least their small corner of it, had changed. The Leo Morrison Foundation had expanded to 15 states. Over 10,000 children received free hearing screenings. Among them, 127 cases of foreign objects discovered in ear canals. 89 children fully regained hearing. 38 partially recovered. But the numbers weren't what mattered most. What mattered was this. The foundation had sparked a new philosophy in medicine. Human-first healthcare. Doctors were now trained not only to work with their hands, but to listen with their hearts, to ask better questions, to observe more carefully, to see patients not as reports or diagnoses, but as human beings. Dave Kellerman became a sought-after speaker. Time magazine named him one of the year's 100 most influential people. Yet Dave remained Dave. Still the single father who drove Ethan to school every morning. Still quiet, grounded, and genuine. No suits, no sports cars, just his calm smile and warm eyes. Alexandra Morrison, though, she changed even more. She learned to let go of control, to truly listen to her son, to measure success by happiness, not profit charts. She found joy in small things. Leo's laughter when he first heard music. The clear, bright way he said, "Mom," each morning. Neurotech kept growing, but in a different direction. Technology no longer replaced humanity. It supported it. AI became a tool for early detection, but the final decisions were left to doctors and patients. And Leo, the boy who once lived in silence, was now 11. He was still learning to live in a world of sound, still wore noise-canceling headphones when needed, still used sign language when tired, still struggled with complex tones. But Leo learned to play the piano. Music fascinated him, especially Beethoven, a composer who created masterpieces in silence, a mirror of Leo himself. He had friends now, laughter, his first melodies, and most importantly, he was happy. One autumn evening in San Francisco, the De Young Museum glowed under golden light, filled with donors, doctors, families, and journalists. Leo stood on stage, a spotlight warming his young, confident face. His hands trembled slightly, but he wasn't afraid. "Good evening," he began, voice still imperfect but steady. "My name is Leo Morrison. 1 year ago, I couldn't hear. I couldn't speak. I lived in silence." The room held its breath. But then, someone saw me. Really saw me. Not as a diagnosis, not as a case, but as a kid who needed help. Leo glanced toward the crowd. Dave sat beside Ethan, smiling, nodding encouragement. Dave didn't save me because it was his job. He saved me because he cared. And that's what this foundation is about. Caring. Seeing people. Listening. Not just with ears, but with hearts. He paused, taking a deep breath. "I'm still learning." Every day I hear new sounds. Every day I learn new words. It's hard. Sometimes I want to go back to silence because it's easier." He looked at his mother. Alexandra wiped tears from her eyes, lips trembling. "But I don't, because now I can hear my mom say, 'I love you.' I can hear my friend Ethan laugh. I can hear rain and music and birds." His voice shook. "So thank you. Thank you to everyone who believed I could hear. Thank you to Dave, who saw what no one else did. And thank you to all the families here tonight who are fighting for their kids." Then Leo raised his hand, forming the deaf sign for "I love you." A simple, universal gesture that said everything. We don't need to be fixed. We just need to be seen. The entire hall rose in a standing ovation. Not polite applause, but thunderous, tear-soaked gratitude. Many cried openly. Dave stood, clapping hard. Ethan beside him did the same. Alexandra walked onto the stage, pulled her son into her arms. Leo hugged her back, small, but strong. And in that moment, beneath the lights, before hundreds of witnesses, Alexandra leaned down and whispered into his ear, knowing he could finally, truly hear her. "I'm so proud of you, baby. So, so proud." Leo smiled through his tears. "I know, Mom. I can hear you." And his laughter, pure, unguarded, ringing through the hall, was the most beautiful sound anyone would ever remember. Ladies and gentlemen, the story of Leo Morrison is not a fairy tale. It isn't perfect. It isn't easy. Leo still struggles every single day. He still battles overwhelming sounds, sleepless nights, and moments when silence feels like peace. He still walks between two worlds, the hearing and the deaf, never fully belonging to either. But he's alive. He loves. He is loved. And that is the real miracle. This isn't just Leo's story. It's a story about all of us. In today's world, we trust technology too much, depend on data, protocols, machines, and forget that behind every chart, every diagnosis, there's a person, a child in pain, a family losing hope, a heart quietly breaking. Alexandra Morrison, with all her power and brilliance, couldn't save her son because she was too busy chasing complex solutions and missed the simplest one right in front of her. But Dave Kellerman, an ordinary man, a single father, a maintenance worker, did what hundreds of doctors could not. Not because he was smarter, but because he cared, because he saw, because he listened. Not with his ears, but with his heart. That's the lesson. Sometimes, the strongest healing doesn't come from laboratories or machines, but from compassion. A glance, a question, a hand reaching out. Dave didn't do something extraordinary. He simply paid attention. He cared. He acted. And that changed everything. So if you ever feel too small, too powerless to make a difference, remember Dave. He wasn't a millionaire. He wasn't a CEO. He wasn't a doctor. But he changed one life. Then hundreds. Then a whole system. And it all began with one act of kindness. Because silence doesn't only live in the ears. It lives in hearts that have stopped listening. Learn from Dave. Learn from Alexandra. Learn from Leo. Listen. Care. Act. Miracles don't fall from the sky. They rise from people. Ordinary people choosing to do extraordinary things out of love. The sky burned amber. Waves brushed the shore. Dave and Ethan walked hand in hand along the beach. Dave paused, staring at the vast ocean. He thought of Rachel, of what he'd lost, and what he'd found again. "Dad," Ethan asked softly, "do you think Mom would be proud of you?" Dave smiled, tears glinting in the sunset. "I think she would, son. I think she would." And in that moment, with the sound of waves, the wind, and the golden light, Dave felt peace for the first time in years, because he had turned pain into purpose, loss into love, and silence into sound. That was the greatest miracle of all. If this story touched your heart, like to support the channel, subscribe, and turn on the bell for more meaningful stories. Comment below. Where are you watching from? And what lesson from this story moved you the most? Because your words might be the small light that helps someone else find their way out of the dark. Thank you for staying till the end. And remember, listen not only with your ears, but with your heart. See you in the next story.